Now, you'll recall that I spoke about, and last time we just touched on the concept of employee experience. And I think something that has been a hot topic for many, many years is the concept of employee engagement. Big consulting firms build entire business practices and revenue models just on the concept of engagement, and it still appears to be this elusive concept. Everyone wants to have higher levels of engagement. And now we find ourselves in this dual environment, half remote, half virtual. So what do we do? We want to use it as a bit of a benchmark. It is important. Best places to work for, that's a key indicator of your engagement levels. How do we foster in a virtual environment? How do we look after employee engagement?
So I think there's a couple of things, and welcome to everyone on the show tonight. So I think there's a couple of things, and I think fundamentally, if you look at engagement or employee engagement, there's core constructs that I think everybody can go and read up and go and understand and go and see. And there's a lot of assessments and models and different aspects. I think where the challenge comes in is not actually the measurement of it, but it's actually how do I then take that measurement and do something with it that actually gives me the engagement results. So I think, when we talk about employee engagement, it's actually just their involvement in the business and them feeling important and engaged and consulted and worked within the business. So I think within a virtual environment, that becomes interesting because a lot of the activities that we do on a daily basis to drive engagement is face-to-face, contact, activities, events, which makes it a lot more challenging when you're sitting from home, or half sits from home, half sits at the office. What do you kind of do to drive engagement? So I think there's a couple of fundamentals that I want to bring in to say, if we're doing employee engagement in a virtual world or mixed world, the first principle is sweat the details. So it's when you're doing an event in the office, you can kind of plan it, put it together, and the event kind of takes its lifespan while you're there, and it kind of grows and evolves. But when you're doing virtual and at workplace, you need to sweat the details. You need to make sure that everything is planned to the T. You need to think about how do you engage the people on the call, how do you engage people in the virtual environment, how do you make them connect with the people in the room, because that's ultimately what you need to do from an engagement perspective. Then the next one is use technology. I think a lot of people are just kind of using it as a medium and is kind of making it as a channel to connect. But I think there's actually a lot of functionality at the moment that can bring a different aspect to employee engagement that wasn't there in the past. A lot of functionalities like virtual breakaway rooms where, you were facilitating an engagement session and the room would have been, you move chairs and everybody goes and sits in a corner, where a virtual environment allows us actually to do a lot more of that, a lot easier, and it creates an intimate relationship, even though you're doing it through a virtual channel. Then the next one is, in certain organizations, it's easy to just say engagement is a human capital thing. They need to drive it. But now you've got people sitting at home, you've got people sitting virtually, so actually your engagement becomes more dependent on your managers and your leaders driving it, and then becoming stronger champions of it than us just organizing stuff and creating a very interlinking and complex program. So leveraging more of your managers, upskilling them to be the engagement champions. And then the second last one is don't assume that every style works for everyone. There's certain individuals that a certain style works for. So you have to plan your engagement activities or what you're trying to achieve through multiple channels, multiple avenues, multiple levels. So that it's not just, okay, we've got a laptop in the room that kind of has a camera where people can see us. There's multiple things to add to kind of get that practical engagement. And the last one is it's easy to focus on the practical side and forget what you're trying to drive. So focus on the results that you're trying to achieve from an engagement perspective. Have those touch points where you reassess, recheck, how are we progressing, how are we moving, and then adjust and align accordingly. So I think it's not just that one yearly engagement survey and then you're like, oh, we're on track and I'm sure we'll be fine in the next year. It actually becomes more broken down, you have to get quicker feedback in terms of what's working, what's not working. So I think from a practical perspective and driving employee engagement in a virtual environment, those are kind of principles to follow and kind of guidelines. But the models and all that kind of stuff that you apply, kind of, you need to think about what fits better in your organization.
Exactly, JP, and I think that my experience is that's the last thing that organizations think about. Is there's this buzzword, employee engagement, and they read it in the Harvard Business Review, and Josh Bersin is talking all around, oh, we need to do this, but what is it and why? Okay, just pause. If you're an employee experience officer or professional and you're part of an engagement initiative, just pause. And say, but what does it actually mean? What does it mean? Are we looking at willingness? Are we looking at commitment? Are we looking at resilience? Are we looking at well-being? Because that will inform, first of all, the type of assessment and how you actually gather feedback from people. So you need to really start with that end in mind, as you've rightfully indicated. And I think something that really resonated with me and that we also experienced with a lot of our clients is you need to be a lot more deliberate and intentional with that. It's no longer you just foster that social interaction as you go and make a cup of coffee. And it is the manager. Okay, research has shown time and time again that manager-employee relationship is a key driver in whether people will stay or leave an organization. And I think more so even now. If you felt isolated when you were in the office and now your manager has got a certain personality preference of not actually reaching out to you, and now they need to intentionally, schedule some time really to engage with you. And love what you said around technology. I mean, part of all our training programs, everything is virtual now. Fortunately, some clients are moving to a sort of a blended approach. There's some in-person, some breakout rooms are brilliant. Brilliant collaborative platforms that we can use. And what I found now is that, yes, conversation is a bit slower when it's through a virtual session, but everyone contributes. Sometimes when you do your small group exercise in a large room and everyone's there around the flip chart, your dominant people tend to dominate. And some other people might then just sort of disappear. So this real intentionality and the transition of leader responsibility, I think that's probably an age-old HR challenge. People is not HR's problem. People is the business problem. I had a session with the master students at University of Johannesburg this morning, really around consulting. I said, really to be an effective consultant, you need to be a business person first and an industrial psychologist second. Really speak to their language, and it talks to engagement as well. And I think, where we find ourselves now is, yes, it's more important now. People see it as an indicator. And now all of a sudden, we need to look after well-being. Okay.